Hello and welcome to part 2 and the final part of Navigators of Dune. Just to catch you up on where we were at the end of part 1, Joseph Venport is down but he's not out in his battle against the Emperor and the Butlerians. He does have a trick up his sleeves though. He has this army of Cymex and his wife Chioba is on her way to Wallach X to call in some favors with the Sisterhood. So far though, he's suffered many defeats against both the Imperial forces and the Butlerians, so we'll see a continuation of this main big battle in part 2. Vorian Atreides is going to be going to Corrin to set traps for the Harkonnens and try to lure them there, to put an end to this decades-long feud at this point. Erasmus has a human body now, and he and Anna Karina are lovers. And remember that Manfred had just got some intel about secret atomics that were abandoned from the machine war times? Well, yeah, this certainly bolsters the Butlerians' chances. Anyway, onto the summary. So, Vorian plants the rumor that he's going to be in Corrin so that he can try and draw out Tula from Wallach X, but he first decides to go to Seleucus Secundus to ask Emperor Roderick for a favor. He wants him to give Willem an opportunity on Seleucia. Willem is smart and he's a good man, and Vor's willing to back him financially if Roderick could find something suitable for him at court. Manfred decides to keep the information about the atomics a secret from Roderick, but he does realize that he will need to convince Roderick to not be so hard on the Butlerians. He knows that part of Roderick's disdain for them was that they were responsible for Roderick's daughter's death, remember? And so Manfred has a statue made in her honor, hoping to win over Roderick, and he calls her one of the martyrs whose lives were lost in the battle to save humanity. Roderick is onto him though, telling his son that Manfred means to make them forget. This puts him in a difficult position because he can't publicly denounce the statue, but he also doesn't want to embrace Manfred over it either. Heditha suggests that they have the statue moved somewhere else and they build a school there in their daughter's memory, and that way they won't have to see the statue every day. But Roderick vows to destroy Manfred. Meanwhile, on Denali, remember Erasmus has been helping Venport's scientists find ways to defeat the Butlerians? Well, he has some more information to share. I know of an undiscovered battle group, 40 robotic warships that were shut down en route to a battle that was already lost. Would you like to add them to Van Hol's resources? His lips formed a smile that he had apparently practiced. Perhaps they would be helpful in your fight against Lambaras. Erasmus starts experimenting with brains again, and it's clear that now that he has all of this freedom of a human body, he has less time for Anna, and she seems to annoy him a little bit. The Tillits soon put an end to his experiments though, because he's just basically mangling really good but failed navigator brains that are really necessary for the Cymic walkers. Valia is able to weed out the sisters who she thinks are problematic, as in she kills them, and she's almost satisfied that the majority of the sisters are growing stronger as a collective under her leadership. Chioba makes it to Wallach X, and Valia isn't really pleased to see her, and she makes it known. She says that Chioba is putting them in a really difficult position and at great risk, but she hears her out. Chioba asks that the Sisterhood be intermediaries in the dispute between Venport and the Emperor. They have a discussion and Chioba pleads her case, but ultimately Valia refuses help. Having the wrath of both the Emperor and the Butlerians is just too much, even though she does admit that everybody would be better off if the dispute ended. Valia is not even apologetic about this, and she finds the decision a rather easy one. She dismisses Chioba and she walks away. Later, Valia gets an urgent intelligence message report from her sister Fiella on Seleucia, saying that Vorian Atreides was just there and that he's headed to Corrin next. Due to her prescience, Norma Kenva is able to sense that her navigator is being held captive in a basement in Seleucia. While she's unable to help him, she does sense a danger coming for Kolhar, something that she thinks could jeopardize their future. So she focuses hard in order to get more information about this imminent attack on Kolhar. Anari Idaho and her team of Butlerians head over to the planet that has the atomics. They work under the cover of darkness over several nights to load them onto a space folder, and then they return to Seleucia. Remember, atomics are forbidden, but Manfred justifies this by saying that Venport brought Cymex to Lambaras, and so he'll fight fire with fire. He moves to inform the Emperor that he intends to take Kolhar. This is welcome news to Emperor Roderick, who is getting sick of being a sitting duck between the Butlerians and Venport. So he hopes that the showdown on Kolhar will solve the problem. He hopes that they'll pretty much destroy each other. Just as Erasmus had said, Drago finds the abandoned thinking machine fleet, 40 battleships hanging in space, and he makes arrangements to have them brought back to Denali. Roderick, meanwhile, readies some troops to leave for Lamparas. The plan is that if the Butlerians are successful on Kolhar and they return home to Lamparas, the Imperial forces will be there to keep them trapped there. However, if the mission on Kolhar turns into a suicide mission, then the Imperial military would just finish them off. Win-win for him. Norma is a step ahead, realizing that her navigators are in danger and that she'll need to evacuate them. She sends a summons to the orbiting ships to retrieve the tanks, the navigator tanks, because there's no other way of saving them from impending nuclear holocaust. Norma also realizes that part of this retaliation is her fault because she forcibly removed everybody from Seleucia while they were negotiating, remember? So she also wants to make up for this mistake by saving her great-grandson, Venport. So she warns him and his wife to make hasty plans to evacuate, even though Yosef is anxious about leaving everything behind on Kolhar. As the Butlerians arrive on Kolhar, Manfred sees that someone had warned Venport. The remaining Venport ships start fighting at the Butlerians, but Manfred knows that he has this ace up his sleeve, the atomics. He then gives the order to detonate the nuclear warheads. He says that he wants nothing to survive on this planet. No animals, no humans. This planet, according to him, is contaminated. Yosef, who is on a Venhold carrier at this time, watches in horror as they pull away. He's floored at the Butlerians' use of atomics, and he's sure that this means that they will be shunned because atomics are strictly forbidden, especially against humans. He gives the order for them to go to Arrakis. Anna and Karina remain by Erasmus's side every day, talking about the most trivial matters, engaging in seemingly endless conversations that Erasmus longed for the times that he had been in full control of their relationship. Instead of this, he wished for the frustrating but intellectually challenging resistance of a strong woman like Serena Butler. Erasmus also doesn't care for her constant need for physical affection, and so he sends her on these random busy work errands, and she does them with the most dedication because, it's for him. He also realizes that he was manipulating her from even before he had this body, this human body, and her mind was very fragile. He knows that she needs reassurances, and so he does fulfill his sexual obligations to her. Their interactions and relationship is also interesting for him to study. But one day she expresses her desire to have a baby, much to Erasmus's alarm. He doesn't make it known that he doesn't share her wish to be a parent, but he's nervous that Anna could already be pregnant. He makes a silent note to have the Taluxa check her and terminate the pregnancy if she is indeed pregnant. Of course, without her knowing. You see, a baby would be too much of a distraction for him. And remember how he killed Serena Butler's baby? Yeah, Erasmus has no problem killing babies, even potentially his own one. Yosef and company arrive on Arrakis, and he thinks that it's worth talking to Emperor Roderick again to make him see that Manfred is a madman. He asks his wife Chioba to go to Seleucia to make Roderick see reason. So Chioba gets there to Seleucia Secundus, and she manages to get an audience with Haditha, the Emperor Roderick's wife. She also informs Haditha of the nuclear attack on Kolhar. She tells Haditha that their husbands need to meet to destroy their real common enemy, Manfred Tyrondo. Then Roderick comes in and Norma joins the meeting to convince him to meet with Yosef in a neutral place, on a ship above Arrakis, and Roderick finally agrees. So now the two men can finally meet and resume their negotiations. Willem is not fully healed, but he's awake and he realizes that Vor has left him to go to Corin when that was supposed to be their joint mission. He tells Harmona that he needs to leave, and while this is against Doctor's wishes and orders, she says that they'll make sure that he has everything he needs, all the resources he needs to get him to Corin, but she hopes that one day he'll come back for her. After Vor leaves Seleucia, he purchases an antique ship and he names it the New Voyager. Remember his old beloved ship Dream Voyager? Anyway, so he heads to Corin, which is kind of a homecoming to him because this was his home life lifetimes ago when he was still on the synchronized world there. This is where he spent his youth. Scavengers now lived in the rubble in a makeshift settlement, and he introduced himself to a hard-bitten woman called Corla, the self-anointed queen of trash, the planetary leader. Several thousand ragged, worn-looking refugees scraped out a living on Corin. The wreckage of the once great machine cities contained riches and oddities for those who were willing to risk the effort to find them. Many were working the piles now, using tools to drill and dig. Vor introduces himself with his real name because, remember, he's leaving the trail for the Harkonnens to find him, though the people on Corin don't really care about him or the outside world. In the evening, Vor sets explosive charges throughout the tunnel system that only he could detonate if he needs to. 30 Imperial space folders arrive at Arrakis, and Roderick hopes that this will be a show of strength that would intimidate Yosef Venport. Remember, they have this meeting set up, but the optics for this are really important to Roderick, even though they might become allies and even though they do really need each other. Roderick can't let anybody see weakness. He admits now that Manfred is a much greater threat to human civilization than Venport. The two men meet, and Roderick reminds Yosef that they have his wife Chiyoba at the Imperial Palace, so he best not try anything. Chiyoba had agreed to set this up, so she's not really being held there against her will or anything. Roderick also admits that the Butlerians' aims are not aligned with those of the Imperium. Yosef eventually asks Roderick to tell him what he can do to resolve their impasse, and Roderick says that he needs to destroy the Butlerians first and then they'll talk, as in Yosef needs to destroy the Butlerians. He's getting his enemy to destroy his other enemy. He says this knowing that Yosef doesn't really have a lot of resources at hand to do that, but surprisingly, Yosef agrees. He says that they'll level Lambadas just as the Butlerians destroyed Kolhar. The men agree to talk once this is done. The Venhold fleet leaves Arrakis and they head to Denali, and this is where they're going to launch their attack on Lambadas. He also plans to return Anna Karina home unharmed if all goes well and Roderick remains true to his word. That ought to sweeten the deal for Roderick. Of course, Anna would make a good human shield and a last resort if the Emperor betrays him. Yosef gives the command for the attack to commence. This obviously shocks Manfred on Lambadas when Anari bursts in and she announces that they are under attack. Manfred is also surprised that Venport even has anything left to fight with because they obliterated Kolhar. She wants to protect Manfred by hiding him in the tunnels and sending out his body double, but Manfred is not having it. He's shook free of her grasp. The demon machines are our greatest enemies, and I will not hide while Venport's monsters lay waste to my world. Now is the time for me to guide my followers. I will rally them. The battle is underway with the Butlerians on Lambadas, and they're on a suicide mission, just crashing their ships recklessly into Venhold ships and the Cymex. Still, Manfred has over 1 million followers on Lambadas, and they're putting up a good fight. One of the Cymex walkers, Telemi, sees Manfred and Anari, and he knocks Anari over, and Telemi picks up Manfred by his torso as he tries to escape. Telemi recorded the look of disgust on Manfred's face. He wished it were fear instead, but realized that he was witnessing the bravery of fanaticism. Manfred's willingness to become a martyr. Telemi didn't care about that. He just wanted the man dead. He tears Manfred apart and he throws his dismembered bits in all directions, much to the shock of his followers. Anari is beside herself as she drops to her knees screaming and sobbing. Then the devastation turns to anger that she uses to fuel herself to fight on for Manfred. She has thousands of Butlerians charge forward. Against such numbers, even the strongest armor and advanced Cymex weaponry could do nothing. The screaming fanatics surged into Ptolemy's Cymex walker and scrambled up the blood-smeared metal limbs. They broke apart the legs with wrenches and cutting tools, dismantled the cab, blew open the turret, and yanked out Ptolemy's brain canister. Things are not going well for Yosef, as Drygo tells him that the Imperial ships have arrived on the scene and that they have been betrayed by the Emperor. Norma also announces that too many of her navigators have been lost and they need to retreat. He had one last card to play. It would be a close thing. He transmitted a parting shot designed to make the Emperor think twice. Admiral, you should know that Anna Karina is safe in my custody. Her life is in my hands. Consider your next actions with extreme care. Unless you cease firing immediately, the Emperor will never see his sister again. The Imperial ships stop firing at them and Yosef gets Norma to fold space and get them out of there. Of course, it would be expected that they go to Arrakis, so Yosef decides that they should go to Denali instead to regroup, where they wouldn't be found. So, by the way, Roderick didn't actually give an order for the Imperial ships to attack Yosef. It seemed a deceitful, even dishonorable move, and Yosef Venport surely believed that the Emperor betrayed him. But Harte, the admiral, had been completely cut off from communication. There'd been no way to stop him. Roderick arrives on Lambadas and he tells Anari to surrender her sword. He tells her that the Butlerians have committed crimes against humanity and that there would be a tribunal to hold them accountable. They'll also be monitored closely on Lambadas and their movement disbanded. He also announces that he'll fund the rebuilding efforts on Empok, which is kind of like the capital city of Lambadas. On Denali, Joseph is licking his wounds. This was a full-on retreat, even though he refuses to be defeated. All of his Cymex on Lamparas had been destroyed, and while there were a few remaining on Denali, they just weren't enough to launch an attack. Erasmus then tells him that when the 40 thinking machine ships are brought to Denali, some of them still have fighting robots in them and they could be repaired and reprogrammed. That would be the last line of their defense if the Imperial troops attack on Denali. Even though Denali is a hidden and unknown planet, Joseph does not want to leave anything left to chance at this point. Valia Harkonnen makes it to Corrin with a team of sisters to take out Vorian Atreides. However, she wants to kill him personally. Tula is there as well, and she's clearly uninterested, and this bothers Valia, who decides that Tula will have to go for guilt eraser training when she gets back to Wallachix. Roderick and the Imperial fighters have access to some navigator logs after combing over the wreckage of Venport's ships looking for Venport. In these logs, they find coordinates to an unremarkable system that had no known habitable planets. This was known as the Denali system. So one of the Suk Scalper interrogators is able to extract some information from their captors and later tells him that Denali is where a super secret research lab is located. After more lovemaking, Erasmus can't handle having to appease Anna anymore, especially now that he's helping the scientists. I mean, their lives are in danger. In their argument then, the whole truth comes out, that Erasmus feels no need to keep sleeping with her because the experiment has been successful and now he has more important things to worry about. Anna is distraught. I mean, she's heartbroken when she realizes that Erasmus doesn't actually love her the way that she loves him. She feels used and lied to, and she runs out while Erasmus gets back to work. Willem reaches Corrin much to Vor's disappointment because he meant for Willem to stay safe and far away from this quarrel that actually started even before Tula had killed Ori. But Willem is there now, and when he insists on staying on, they do form a team and they move around Corrin together, not settling in one place for too long, not for more than one night anyway. One evening, as Vor is taking watch and Willem is asleep, he hears something and the two men get ready. He hears Valia then telling him to come out and stop hiding like a coward. They eventually face off against each other, and Valia mentions that Vor killed her brother. He insists that he didn't and that they were actually friends. When Valia doubts this, one of the Truthsayer sisters steps forward and says that Vor is actually telling the truth. Valia still doesn't believe it, and she thinks that Vor has found a way to poison the Truthsayer, and they all start fighting. And at one point, Valia is on the ground after Vor kicks her feet out from under her. Looking up from her apparent vulnerability, she spoke in a strange, throaty voice. "When I come towards you this time, your muscles will freeze." Yeah, so she's using the voice. At her eerie, commanding tone, Vor suddenly found that he could not move. It was as if his body had turned to stone. A frightening, uncontrolled sensation. By concentrating though, he managed to break free of whatever strange hold she had inflicted upon him. Realizing that the attack was only in his mind, he forced it aside. Valia's look of confidence faded as she saw him slide to his left, on the move again and ready to counterattack. Just then, she sees Willem take Tula down. Valia tries to get to her, and Tula is defiant and she tries to get up, but Vor pounces on Valia and Willem almost kills Tula. Roderick and his Imperial troops close in on Denali. He gets the comm system to give a message to Joseph telling him that he should surrender and bring Anna Carino, otherwise they'll be destroyed. Joseph responds asking why he should trust Joseph when he already betrayed them by attacking them after Venport had destroyed the Butlerians. Remember their deal on Arrakis that Venport attacks the Butlerians and then he and Roderick can talk about being allies. Yeah. Roderick apologizes, saying that Admiral Harte was under previous orders and he had no knowledge of their new deal. Now the Admiral wants to destroy the labs from orbit, but Roderick says that Anna is an innocent and she's somewhere down there. So if they do strike, they're going to need to be very precise. He does allow the Admiral to neutralize Venport's warships in orbit though. Anna Carino, utterly heartbroken, thinking that the Butlerians were right about the machines and feeling like a fool to have fallen for Erasmus, steps out into the poisonous air of Denali. Erasmus, meanwhile, realizes just how much he hurt Anna. It was as though he felt actual guilt and sadness for the hurt that he caused her, which is new to him. He goes looking for her in their quarters, in the labs, and she isn't there. Then he goes to the hangar and he sees that the airlock light is activated. He sees Anna weeping and he goes out into the poisonous Denali atmosphere. He goes out there, risking his own body, choking on the gases in the air, and with a lot of effort, he does get to her. He picks her up and he sees that her eyes are already white, like she's going blind. He apologizes and he tells her that he never meant to hurt her. Her final words are, "My Erasmus, and she dies in his arms. His body then begins to fail. He's unable to get back inside as it starts bubbling and smoking, the acid scouring away at his flesh. Anna is dissolved into nothing at this point, and so is Erasmus eventually. Even when it's just his gel sphere left, the acid destroys that too. So basically they die in each other's arms. Too bad for Venport, because Roderick wants to see proof that Anna is still alive, but he stops his attack and he agrees to negotiate. Venport agrees to get Anna, but nobody can find her anywhere until Drago looks on one of the monitors and he sees that she's already passed through the airlock in the hangar and into the outside air. The monitor also showed that Erasmus went out after her, so they are both most certainly dead. Joseph tries to buy some time with Roderick, but it doesn't work because his truthsayer Fiella is with him, and Roderick eventually asks if Anna Carino is alive. Joseph ends the communication there. Fiella tells Roderick that it's certain that Anna is dead. That's when the Imperial side starts bombing. Well, anyway, we find out that Willem didn't kill Tula after all, obviously, and he's about to, maybe, and she tells him that she understands why he would want to, but to understand that he would be killing an Atreides too. Yes, she is carrying Ori's child. This is the end of the world for Valia, who screams at the sky that her Harkonnen sister is pregnant with an Atreides baby. Vor tells Valia that since her fight was with him, she should get her pound of flesh, but it should end here. Willem should be left alone to live his life in peace, and Valia and Vor, they have a go at each other. Roderick has a meeting with Norma Kenva. It's an unplanned meeting really, because she just appears, and she tells him that this issue with her navigators is out of hand and they need to rectify it. Roderick agrees that they need to bring order to the Imperium in general, and this is when he proposes creating a spacing guild. I would endorse a unified and reliable spacing fleet of large ships guided without error by navigators. I propose the creation of an independent spacing guild to serve commerce throughout the Imperium. Communication and transportation is the tapestry that binds our civilization together across countless planetary systems. Trade must be allowed to function unfettered by war or the threat of war. Under this new spacing guild, I will see that you have all the navigators you wish and that all the spice. As Emperor, I can ensure that your conditions are met. My Imperium also requires navigators. I need safe and commercial shipping. If we consolidate the spice harvesting operations on Arrakis under Imperial administration and flush out any smugglers there, you will have the constant flow of melange you need to your benefit and mine. He placed his face against the viewing port. I will save your navigators, Norma Kenva, but Venport Holdings must fall. This is not negotiable. How would you save my navigators without Venport Holdings? He took heart from apparent interest. The Venhold spacing fleet is a good model. If it were under the leadership of anyone other than Joseph Venport. Venport Holdings as a company must be dissolved. The whole Imperium must see that they have been defeated after defying their emperor. Norma agrees to this, even though it means that she's betraying Venport's business interests and her great-grandson. When Fiella asks about this, she says that, well, he's an insignificant mortal and that through her prescience, she has seen the Spacing Guild. They make an agreement that the Emperor will stop shooting at Venport vessels in order to not harm any more navigators. And he gives his Imperial promise that while they still continue their ground assault, the navigators won't be harmed. He then sends orders to arrest all of the scientists and have Venport brought to him. On Corrin, Vor is on the ground, battered and broken, and Corla, the Queen of the Trash, orders Valia to stand down. She orders that Vorian leave there alive. There is another problem now for Tsula, who has both warring families laying claim to her unborn baby. Willem wants the child to be raised on Caladan as an Atreides, but Valia says that the baby belongs to the sisterhood. Eventually, Corla orders Vorian to leave while they hold Valia. She no longer wants this mess on her doorstep. Vor wants this vendetta finished here and now, but this is obviously not going to happen. Valia swears to him that she'll hunt him down, and in any case, their bloodlines are now joined. I have your bloodline in my grasp, she tells him. Later, when Valia is telling Willem, who is also currently under Corla's protection, that she'll find Vor, something happens. Suddenly, with a boom that cracked across the sky like thunder, Vor's ship exploded in mid-air. Its engine split open in the fiery geyser that ripped the hull apart. The fuel tanks ignited, adding a double, then triple fireball. Large pieces of torn, burning wreckage tumbled out of the sky, patterning into the ruins of the machine buildings. In the sky, a blossom of smoke and flames spread out, then faded like spirits drifting away. Vorian Atreides is dead, and Valia accepts this as a triumph. Corla and Willem suspect that the sisters might have rigged the ship, but there's obviously no proof of that. And remember, Vorian had worked hard at rigging explosives in the tunnels. Who's to say that he didn't rig his own ship as well? The walls are closing in on Joseph Venport, and he realizes that he's out of options and that his gran has sold him out. There are some Cymic fighters that Erasmus had programmed, and they could provide some defense, but it's just not enough to turn the tide. The Imperial soldiers start to breach the labs. Norma appears then and tells him about the guild, and tells Joseph that since Roderick swore not to harm the Navigators, that Joseph should become one. A navigator, that is. When Roderick summons Joseph and Norma tells him this, that he's now, turning into a navigator, obviously Roderick flies into a rage. It turns out that Vorian Atreides is not dead after all, and as soon as he boards the new Voyager, he does sense that something's off though, and he sees that somebody, probably the Sisterhood, had booby-trapped his ships set to detonate when it hit a certain altitude. He decides to let the ship explode as he escapes, and he decides to hide for several days until he thinks it's safe to leave. When the next trade space folder arrives at Corrin, with the help of one of the scavengers, he boards it and he leaves. He's lived more than 2 centuries at this point. Roderick finally feels confident in his role as emperor. Chioba, Venport's wife, had escaped, and rumor has it that she was on Warlock X. Valia is now on Seleucia to represent her sisterhood and the Harkonnen family. She'd also used her position to negotiate a position for her younger brother Danvis at court. The Emperor is currently holding some celebrations after the defeat of both Venport and the Butlerians. Valia Harkonnen is also having a bit of an internal celebration because she's finally rid of Vorian Atreides. Now she's ready to restore the Harkonnen name to what it should be. Now that she no longer has the Atreides distraction, she can focus on the Harkonnen family's rise to prominence, a position she believes that they deserve. She tries to guide her brother so that he smoothly ingratiates himself to important people in the Landsraad and to make connections, but he doesn't really seem to be the future of the Harkonnens. Willem is also on Seleucia now, and although he does this with a heavy heart, he knows that this was Vor's last wish, so he's looking forward to it and he's making the best of it. Princess Harmona, back on Chusuk, had said that she had business on Seleucia, so she's on her way there too. And he is looking forward to seeing her as well. At this time, the Landsraad is still been established, and not every planet has a representative, and Caladan was pretty far off and insignificant, but Willem knows that if he works hard and builds his reputation, he could earn the respect of the Emperor and become Caladan's Landsraad representative. He and Danvis Harkonnen finally meet when they both are on the team to survey one of the disaster sites to be rebuilt. In fact, Roderick announces that both of them will have to set an example to do what's best for the Imperium. The two men look at each other with barely concealed rage as Willem brainstorms ways to kill Danvis as repayment for his family's crime. So yeah, Harkonnens and Atreides are not done with each other, not by a long shot.